The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
You all have before you a copy of the modified written agenda. Are there any proposed revisions to the agenda as written? Alderman Dibble.
Under board business, item D, consideration of acceptance proposal for the alternative fuels conversion program. I'd like to place that on consent.
All right, the proposed revision from Alderman Dumas is to place item 10D on page 3, the consideration of the acceptance of a proposal for the alternative fuels conversion project on the consent agenda. Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas.
Under personnel, item 1, for that to be on consent with the addition of 12/30/2010 as the commencement date.
All right, Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item H1 on page 5, request approval of temporary pay increases for personnel policy for fire department employees assigned to temporary positions due to retirement and absence to work-related injury beginning on 12/30/2010 on the consent agenda. Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter has been placed on the consent agenda. Further proposed revision.
And then considering that Dr. Wall's request has been placed on consent, I was wondering if she was still interested in.
Dr. Wall, would you still like to make your presentation? Your item is on the consent agenda.
Have questions for me, I'd be here if they answer questions, but I feel that I don't need to.
Are there any questions for Dr. Wall regarding the inserts in the electric bills for the Humane Society? Any questions from the members of the board? Any questions? Seeing none, Alderman Dumas, do you have a proposed revision?
I'd like to place or remove item A under public appearances from the agenda.
All right, Alderman Dumas has proposed striking item 7A from the agenda. That's a public appearance by Diane Wall. Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that item has been stricken from the agenda. Further proposed revisions.
Last one I have is item F, consider appointment for Technology Committee for the selection of applicants for the position of Information Technology Manager to consent.
All right, Alderman Dumas has proposed placing item 10F on page 3, the appointment of the Technology Committee, Mayor Wiseman, and Personnel Director and Chief Administrative Officer to screen applicants for the IT Manager position on the consent agenda. Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Further proposed revisions. Do we have any further proposed revisions? Alderman Court.
Since the duty draw is in its, I want to say, fifth successive year, then I would propose going ahead and adding item C under board business to the consent.
Mr. Mayor, I object to that, please.
All right, with the objection, that matter will remain on the regular agenda. Further proposed revisions. Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Do we have any further proposed revisions to the agenda? Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Corey to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter before you is the, well, actually, we do not have the approval of the consent agenda on the agenda. Would somebody like to amend the agenda to place the consent agenda approval on it?
Mayor, I move that approval of the consent agenda be added to the agenda after item 3.
Alderman Corey's made a motion to add the approval of the consent agenda to the agenda after the approval of the official agenda. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Carver. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. We'll now move into consideration of the approval of the consent agenda. Is there any objection to the consent agenda as revised? Any objection to the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised is approved. And that will take us to the approval of the minutes. The first set of minutes you have is for the November 23rd, 2010 special call meeting. Discussion. And the city attorney had some proposed changes for the November 23rd minutes.
And Mayor, we've whittled those down to one change, and I've discussed that with the city clerk. We're just going to add the words "ease of" in between 4 and referencing in item 2.
Okay. So that's just the second of your original 2 proposed changes.
Correct.
All right. Discussion.
Mayor, I move approval of the November 23rd, 2010 minutes with the correction provided by the city attorney.
Alderman Corey has moved approval of the November 23rd, 2010 special call meeting minutes with the correction as previously stated by the city attorney included. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second? Second. Motion has been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, thank you.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Next matter on the agenda is the consideration of the December 7, 2010 regular meeting minutes. Discussion.
So moved.
Mayor, this that I put on the table need to be exchanged for order number 20 in those minutes.
All right, you have on your table an attachment from the city clerk. She has recommended placing this in the minutes in exchange for the item number 20 that appears in your minutes in your packet. Discussion. Alderman Dumas, did you have a motion?
I move.
Can you give me 1 second, Mayor?
Is your motion to approve with the exchange?
With the exchanged items as reduced in writing.
Just a second.
You may.
Mr. Carver, I saw that you may have a question. What happened in the copying and collating process? The wrong resolution was attached to that action item, so we just substituted the right
This
resolution.
is the low and moderate job creation.
Correct, and the right resolution should be at your seat.
All right, so Alderman Dumas, is your motion to approve of the minutes for the December 7, 2010 regular meeting of the Board of Alderman with item 20 placed on the table, exchanged for item 20 that appeared in the minutes in the packet?
That's correct.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And that will carry us to comments by the mayor and board.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, excuse me, I skipped it. All right, that will carry us to our final set of minutes set for approval tonight, and that is the December 8, 2010 special call meeting minutes. Discussion. Who moved it? Alderman Parker has made a motion to approve of the December 8, 2010 special call meeting minutes. Alderman Parker, is that your motion? There is a second.
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Parker, do you wish to speak on the merits? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Now, that will carry us to comments by the mayor and the board. And before I get to our employee introduction, I just want to remind the board, members of the press and public, that we will be having our annual retreat next Friday and Saturday. That's January 14th and 15th. We'll begin sometime mid-afternoon. Still have yet to determine the precise time on the 14th, and then have a morning session on the 15th, much as we did last year. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the most recent addition to the fire department. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you Bill Flowers. He is our newest firefighter. Bill is originally from Starkville and is a graduate of Starkville High School. He also graduated at East Mississippi Community College with an associate's degree in liberal arts. Before joining the fire department, Bill was manager of Quiznos for 6 years. He is married to Athena Flowers, and they have 3 children, 14-year-old Alonzo, 10-year-old Jalen, and 9-year-old Abigail. They attend St. Matthew's Church of God in Christ. Bill enjoys working in the community and is known for his big heart. Please join me in welcoming Bill Flowers. All right, and that's all of my comments for this evening. Alderman Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see our attorney, bond attorney from Jackson. It appears that we have approved his matter on the consent agenda, and I think if we need to just let him know whether or not we need him to stay on this, but he's welcome to stay unless we have some questions for him. We normally give him the courtesy of getting on back to, I think, Jackson after having a long day. But let me ask Mr. Wallace, is there anything you need to address the board with, or you just want to stay with us tonight? Or
let me just mention that.
And before you do that, Mr. Mayor, would it be okay just to go ahead and recognize? We normally recognize him out
Sure.
of the fact he's traveled so far and his matter's been approved.
Sure.
Thank you.
Just a very short comment that with this approval, we can go ahead and get the rating and get the pre-rating so that we know that we can get one at the right time if we need to. And we expect that we will be going ahead to see if we can nail down. The market right now is still, we had some bumpy times in December. The market's still good for this, so if we can wrap it up in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think that's what we'll do. So I think that's it. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Fine with me that you approved it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, further comments from the members of the board. Alderman Sistrom.
First, I want to wish everyone a happy new year. So, on to 2011. But I'd like to give a very public thank you to the sanitation department and other departments that have been involved in cleaning up from our previous set of wind damage. And I want to thank all those departments that came out over the holidays and helped with the wind damage that we had at our during the holidays. Something that we never expect, and we've had more than our share of it so far this year. So thank y'all for your hard work. We appreciate it.
Further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments from the members of the board? Are there any further comments? Seeing none, we will move into citizen comments. And any citizen wishing to make comments this evening may do so by coming forward, introducing yourselves, and you will be allowed to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good evening to the mayor and the board, to Vice Mayor Citron, Alderman Vaughn.
Good evening.
At the last board meeting, I was kind of ill, but I came. But we had some concerns, and I would like to restate them since I'm a little better. The citizens, they were very disappointed that the lights didn't get up in time for the Christmas parade. That was very disappointment. Another disappointment, we had 3 fights at the Christmas parade on Main Street. Police officers were very busy carrying people to jail. People have gotten very desperate now. And we definitely do not need someone like the situation in Panama City, Florida, where the guy brought a gun to the board meeting and then turned around and killed himself. And we would like for the sanitation department and the public works department to be careful because people are very desperate now.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Any further citizen comments? Yes, sir.
I'm Chuck Scarborough. I live at 2305 Douglas MacArthur Drive, Green Oak subdivision. I am 100% against requiring sidewalks in the industrial park or in the Sproul Industrial Park. I own some land on Sproul Road, or more properly, it's known as Sproul Industrial Park Road, just west of the sports complex. There are no parking signs on the west side of the street, which is where I own. I can't see any reason why, when I develop my property, I should have to be required to put down sidewalks. And I understand that there's a motion or to allow some exceptions to the sidewalk ordinance or the proposed sidewalk ordinance, and it includes the industrial park. But there's a separate area, I believe it's known as the Sproul Industrial Park, in which my land is located, and it's just west of the sports complex. I would like that land to be included in the exception to the sidewalk ordinance or the proposed sidewalk ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scarborough. And you are permitted during citizen comments to speak on any topic you'd like, but just for informational purposes, we do have a public hearing scheduled tonight for discussions on the sidewalk ordinance. Further citizen comments?
Mayor and Board, thank you very much. I was fortunate before Christmas to be able to tour the City Hall along with the police department and some of the other offices upstairs. And I want to encourage everyone in attendance at the meeting to come take the tour. I was completely appalled at the state of facilities here, the lack of security, the health concerns that our city employees are enduring, while they're sitting in their offices. We're talking about mold, mildew, ceilings collapsing, not enough space to store records where they're secure. People can come into the building and tamper with them, but God forbid anything like that ever happen. So the need for a new complex is, I'm sure it's probably been this way for years, and I'm just now seeing this flooding in parts of the building. The storage, I'm ashamed as a resident of Starkville looking at these things. So I want to encourage anyone, if you have a spare, it doesn't take long to come out, just a little bit of time to come out and tour the facility. It will certainly give you a new perspective on some of the possibilities for the Justice Complex. I appreciate y'all providing those opportunities for us to be able to come out and see the conditions that you and other city workers are being subjected to.
Could you state your full name for the record?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm Kenny Langman. I'm in Ward 1 for Forest Hill Drive.
Thank you. Further citizen comments?
Curtis Bush, 721 Vine Street, and I'm considering, and I'd like for the board to really consider
Mr.
this.
Bush, you are certainly permitted to speak on anything you'd like during the citizen comment time, but we will have a time for presentations on the Vine Street rezoning proposal when that comes up later in the meeting.
All right.
But if you'd like to use your 3 minutes now, you're certainly permitted to as well.
Right.
Citizen comment is an open forum, so I just didn't want to keep you from speaking, but I wanted you to know that we'd have time for discussion on the Vine Street issue later.
Well, I have a concern still on my street. We don't have a sidewalk down there, and I'm concerned about that with some of the issues that the guy wants to change down there on Vine Street. And plus, we need some speed breakers or something down there, because they're running like 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour from Sonic straight down the street, or either up. every day.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Bush.
What is the posted speed limit on Vine?
The speed limit on Vine is 15 and 30. It was at 30, but they changed to 15.
And Vine runs north and south of Highway 12?
That's right.
And it's 15 on both north and south?
Yes. No. On the other one, it's 30.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Further citizen comments? Do it.
Michael Queeson, Ward 5. I've been following in the newspaper, I've been out of town, the discussions about recycling and the recycling costs going up. And to me, recycling is a way of saving money. Now, I don't know, with these new contracts, is recycling gonna start costing us more than if we threw the garbage away, or where does that stand? And I hope we'll still save money under the new contract, and that being the case, I'd like to see recycling promoted, if not made semi-mandatory. I mean, I lived in New Jersey, it was mandatory statewide. I don't think anybody was, ever arrested and carted off to jail for violations of that. The only time I saw any action taken, the apartment complex next to me, I think, never put out any recycling. So one garbage pickup, they made the manager go through their dumpster and take out all the recycling to get the message. So I don't know if we can make it mandatory where we don't have it, even a misdemeanor or something, but just maybe highly encouraged. And hopefully with even the new contracts, it saves us money to recycle. If we get recycling rates up, we have more money for the budget, which was a big discussion. So hopefully we're still saving money by recycling, and we can increase the amount of it. In my neighborhood, it's very, very low. I think it may be costing energy and money for them to come pick up my one household in my street.
Thank you, Mr. Aquison. Further citizen comments? Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move to public appearances, and our first and only public appearance of the evening is from Robin Kane on behalf of the Starkville Main Street Association. Ms. Kane?
Hi, I'm Robin Kane with the Starkville Main Street Association, and we are planning the 5th annual Duty Girl Parade and a first-time red beans and rice cook-off for February 4th. The red beans and rice cook-off would be on Main Street. We would ask that we could use the pedestals that are up on Main Street for electricity for the teams to cook, and the outlets in the flower beds. And then the parade will start at 5:30. We would ask that the streets be closed from 4 until 6, just Main Street and University. And the parade will be at 5:30. So those are the city services we would be asking for, would be the electricity on Main Street and the streets to be closed from 4 to 6.
Are there any questions or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Perkins.
Thank you. Ms. Kane, good evening. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. Let me make sure I understand the exact closure location from Main and Dale Connor down to Main and University.
I'm sorry. It would be all the way to the entrance to Mississippi State University.
Okay, all the way to the entrance.
Yes, sir.
Down to entrance. I'm not against your request and the gentleman from 4-1 to get on the consent agenda, but I just want to make a few hopefully friendly, constructive comments. It has been brought to my attention by staff that that your organization has not coordinated these events with them as of this time, and the point I want to try to respectfully convey to your organization is that it's very important to our governmental operations that these type matters, just not for your organization, but for any other similarly situated organization, to coordinate this with our special events committee, because it goes beyond just the closure of the streets that has to be approved by the board, but you have matters like electric department, the police department, the sanitation. So the mayor, the chief administrative officer, and the department heads are required to gather all that information and present it to the board for our consideration. So I'm going to offer a motion when we get to that section of the agenda to approve this closing contingent upon your organization meeting with the appropriate staff and the events committee. So hopefully in the future, and we're not picking on you, but we're just trying to, the staff demonstrated and indicated that they need this done in a very timely manner. So, but we appreciate you. Those are just only concerns, so I'm going to support this. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Carver.
First of all, thank you for coming and doing this. I think it's another good community opportunity. Y'all got good ideas of the partnership. About the chili cook-off, are y'all going to advertise? I know I had a couple questions. I think I may try to get in there myself.
Yeah.
Entry fees and limits to memberships, and will y'all advertise in the Starkville Daily or Dispatch? Or?
We are planning on advertising, actually planning on releasing applications within the next week to 2 weeks. It will be a $50 entry fee, and there'll be a first, second, and third place. And we will be doing a lot of advertising. This is actually going to be, this is the beginning of like an 8-day event. We'll have the red beans and rice cook-off, the Duty Gras parade, and then beginning on Saturday will actually be the 8 days of Duty Gras culinary tour. So it'll be very heavily publicized.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Corey?
Robin, will the parade start at Rick's as it has in previous years and then just go around?
It will.
But you're only needing to have Main Street and University closed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Last year, they just kind of they just left Rick's, and the parade actually started when they got to where Mugshots is.
Further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Gay. And that will take us to our second public hearing on amending the 2009-07 sidewalk ordinance, creating specific areas that are exempted from the requirements for sidewalks. Alderman Carver, would you like to introduce?
Yes, sir. I think everyone knows what this is and what's going on. I had a question before I introduced. Mr. Scarborough came before, and that's not the only constituent. I've had several constituents ask. I've had several constituents ask about the. And maybe Ms. Sproul can help. What is the correct name of the street that he's talking about across from McKee Park?
Sproul Industrial Road.
Is that is it too late legally to add that into an amendment of an ordinance, or is that?
Chris.
Yes, I
Yes.
think we need to go with what's on the books right
Okay.
now. Otherwise, we would have to potentially open the process back up
Right.
to additional hearings, which would be at your pleasure, whichever way you wanted to go with that. But if we wanted to proceed tonight, it needs to be what's already had a first public hearing on.
Okay.
In the past, you've suggested that when the ordinance changes while the public hearings have started, an additional 2 is not necessary, but an additional 1 would be necessary. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if you change the ordinance, you could go forward with 1 additional public hearing, but you wouldn't have to have 2.
Okay. I brought this before the board for consideration, and this is the second public hearing on amending the 2009-07 sidewalk ordinance, exempting a quadrant. We're going to, it's all defined in paragraph 4-8, and it's just an exemption of and a definition of industrial park region within the city of Starkville, which would be Industrial Park Road from Pollard to Miley Road, Miley Road from Industrial Park Road to Airport Road, Airport Road from Miley Road to Pollard Road, and Pollard Road from Airport Road to Industrial Park Road. So that's just the quadrant out there of what we consider our industrial park, and then exempting that from the sidewalk ordinance. So I'll speak more to the subject when we get into the actual consideration.
Are there any further introductory comments from the other members of the board? Any further introductory comments? Any further introductory comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move to the public comment portion of the public hearing. And in keeping with standard practice, we'll conduct this as we have conducted previous public hearings on ordinance passage or amendments, and that is we will have a 30-minute period of public comment, and we will hear speakers for a maximum of 3 minutes, alternating, hearing from a speaker for first and then a speaker against, until both sides have exhausted their 15 minutes. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed amendments to the sidewalk ordinance?
How y'all doing? Happy New Year to y'all.
Happy New Year.
I'm Rudy Johnson, Director of the Golden Triangle Planning and Development District. I'm pretty sure everybody recognized me by now. Again, I'm asking for an exemption. The way I view it is the industrial park is there for job creation and economic development, and that's what I plan to do. I'm looking at building a $1.6 million facility there. With the economic times that they are, with us being able to build this building, that's going to put over $700,000 in this community for jobs. DOS Electric, Synergetics, Security Solutions, so Sullivan's, so is it? We need job creation, and when I get this building built, then there's another adventure that I want to go into, which is going to create another 20 jobs. You know, our payroll is $5.1 million. Before I retire and get run off, I want it to be $7.5 million. That's a lot of money for this community to be fighting over a $25,000 sidewalk. And I want to go forward, but I'll make a deal with you. I'll get my board to pass a resolution that's saying that we will build a sidewalk from now to 100 years if we get a connecting sidewalk to build it to. Because we want to go forward with this project. If you look behind me, our seniors want this project, and we just want to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Do we have anyone wishing to speak against the proposed sidewalk ordinance amendment?
Just wanted to clear up, I'm sorry, Bethany Stitch, Ward 1. I wanted to clear up a couple things real quickly that I've heard in the last couple public hearings. The first is I brought this map because it highlights the work. There's been a lot of talk about we need to prioritize our cities, which streets we want, where projects should go. This is working with the Transportation Committee, the Comprehensive Planning Committee, and then everybody that worked on the Tiger proposal. And if you look in the bottom right corner, you'll see that Industrial Park Road is a major north-south connector on the west side of town, serving both Wards 2 and Ward 3 to get over to the retail and commercial development that's there. So I wanted to clarify at least that we have done this work. We have looked at these priority streets, and Industrial Park Road is indeed one of them. And this does not take into account the $850,000 connector into Airport Road that was in the omnibus bill. So that will probably expand even farther west as we move forward, southwest. The second one is, we've talked a lot about wanting some actual information about what's going on in the industrial park area. So since there have been requests for facts, I tried to go out and get some. I contacted 15 of the 27 businesses located along the streets in question. 12 of the 15 replied, 3 chose not to participate, and with the holidays, it was just very difficult to get anybody to answer the telephone, frankly. So of the 12 businesses, 10 stated that they see people walking or biking regularly, and of the 12, they self-identified as 5 industrial, 6 commercial, and 1 other, which was the Humane Society. So there's some data for you to use as you make your decision.
Thank you, Ms. Stitch. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed sidewalk ordinance amendment? Anyone wishing to speak in favor?
Jim McHale, Ward 5. I ask you for reasonable and rational decisions. This is just one of many things that need doing in our city. There cannot be any citizen who would object to having sidewalks everywhere that are walkable. I'll point out to you that within 2 blocks of City Hall, there are sidewalks that have not been maintained and are dangerous to walk on. So let's think about maintaining sidewalks as well as building new sidewalks. I also want you to know that there are people here, the senior citizens, people from senior citizens and other seniors who are supporting the variance. And we're just asking you to make a rational decision and in favor of no sidewalks in that industrial park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McHale. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor, or excuse me, in opposition to the proposed sidewalk ordinance amendment?
Good evening, Mayor and Board. Jim Gafford, Ward 5. I will defer to Mr. Turner if he's getting ready. Thanks, sir. I'd like to talk about this from 3 different perspectives. One is, first I'd like to begin on development of the industrial park. There are numerous non-industrial uses in the industrial park has been cited, and this is within the proposed sidewalk exclusionary zone. Moreover, the PDD project itself is obviously non-industrial, and as recently as a week ago on December 28th, the Starkville Daily News reported the development of a baseball training facility on Industrial Park Road. If the will of this board is to increase the viability of this area for industrial development, the current sidewalk exclusion proposal does nothing to accomplish this goal and may be counterproductive. Many of the newer developments in the area, including the PDD, by design, must attract the general public to be successful. This points to an increase in need for pedestrian access, not a restriction. In order to create a true industrial zone, the city must first craft policies and ordinances that preserve the area for industrial use. The proposal we are debating presently does nothing in this regard. Secondly, there are no supporting facts for the exclusionary zone. There are only 2 purported reasons for creating the zones, and there have been no findings to support these suppositions. The first reasoning has been that the cost of sidewalk installation will negatively impact the ability to recruit industrial development. At this time, this is pure speculation. Conversely, there are numerous examples of industrial parks that include sidewalks and are successful at continuing to attract developments nationally. One can just as honestly say, with the facts that we have at hand, that the allowance of community centers in an industrial park will also negatively impact our ability for industrial recruitment. However, this too is a supposition and not a fact. The second reason that's been put forward is there is no need nor future need for pedestrian access. While a conclusive and objective study of the area has not been conducted, there is evidence to the contrary at present. Further, development trends point to an increase in future need for pedestrian access in the area unless proper steps are taken to restrict land use in the area to ensure that future development is purely industrial and the need for public access is minimized. Given our broad land use policies and lack of land use planning at present in the city, the Transportation Committee cannot offer support for creating exclusionary zones. However, allowing for variances to the ordinance to be granted where it be burdensome to a development to do otherwise is sound policy, and we recognize that. No objectively reasoned burden has been established by any development in the proposed exclusionary zone to date. It's outside of the purview of the Transportation Committee to consider planning beyond the scope of transportation needs within the existing city planning framework. As stated, land use planning in the city is nebulous, and therefore it is irresponsible for the city to assume certain areas will develop in such a way as to not require pedestrian access when the ability to ensure those areas are set aside as exclusionary zones develop in this manner is available to you. You have this power, and through this the standalone proposal are irresponsibly choosing not to exercise it.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor?
I'm Jackie Dorsey, Ward 2. When I moved here in 2000, there wasn't a facility for seniors. We now, through the hard work of Rudy, Ms. Georgia Murphy, and Jim, and others, we have a facility, and they're trying to expand it. If there were adjacent sidewalks to that place, I would say, yes, put it in. But we all know that I'm 72, and I promise you, if I live to be 95, there won't be any, because it's already developed out. And it is utterly ridiculous for anybody in this economy to waste the money that we're talking about wasting just because we've got an order. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the proposed sidewalk ordinance amendment?
Reading to the Mayor Board, names Avon Turner, Ward 7. I have 3 police officers that is my church member, and they fear for me after being hit once. It would hurt our officer body to hear that I got hit. Like, it would hurt Chief Nichols to hear that I got hit again. Like, it would hurt our Officer Shoemaker to know that I got hit again. The disability, handicap, people that can't drive, do you really care? Are you just trying to please people? But if anything happens, the blood is on the government body. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Mr. Scarborough?
This is the one to exclude the industrial park. I'm in favor of that. Okay. My property is zoned manufacturing, just like the rest of the industrial park, or most of the rest of the industrial park. There's no reason why my property should be split off. If the rest of the industrial park gets gets excluded from the sidewalk ordinance, my property should too. I would consider that a blatant case of discrimination if it wasn't. The zoning's the same. There are no parking signs on the west side of the street. There's no reason for there to be sidewalks on the west side of the street, because people have to go across the street to get to the soccer fields. If there's going to be any sidewalks on that street, it should be on the east side, not on my side. So I want to be excluded also. I'm in the same location, and the zone is the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scarborough. Is there anyone wishing to speak now in opposition of the proposed amendment?
I'm Devin Brenner. I'm in Ward 5. I'm also the former president of Starkville in Motion, and as such I represent well over 300 citizens of the city of Starkville who are all members of Starkville in Motion. All of us are in favor of the sidewalk ordinance, and we want to thank you for passing it. It makes the city a stronger, better, more economically viable, healthier place. And the more pedestrian friendly we become, the better. It's difficult to start a sidewalk ordinance because then you end up with pieces of sidewalk while you're waiting for it all to get connected. But we have to start somewhere. Our transportation committee is currently considering ways to make exceptions when the sidewalk ordinance is a burden, and we need to trust that process. If we start allowing just one person to ask for a variance and then change it, and then we have to do it for the next person. We already have a person who's asking to be added to the list of excluded streets. Every developer who wants to save $25,000 out of $1.6 million is going to ask for a variance, except for those who want sidewalks out of the good of their hearts. And so the ordinance really matters, and I'm asking you to trust your transportation committee and to trust the process and to stick with the law that you passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brenner. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed sidewalk ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor?
I'm in favor of a variance process. This idea of one person's given a variance, someone else will, we got to get over that. There's a fallacy called a slippery slope fallacy. It's in logic books. That when I was in New Jersey, again, they are much more restrictive in making people put in sidewalks, but they also allowed the ruling body to decide where they should go and where they should not. We have to trust those who we elect, and if we don't like them, they come up every 4 years. So I think this ruling body needs a process, not this variance and this every time we're going to add a street, redo the whole ordinance. I'd like to see a process by which these can be handled administratively and then appeal to this body on a regular basis. Sidewalks are not needed everywhere. I'm not going to decide where they're needed or not. If I did, who would listen to me anyway? But I do think this body, whoever sits here, ultimately should have that power. So I'd like to see the ordinance changed to one similar I found in Hillsborough, New Jersey, that allows their ruling body to determine if a site needs it or not.
Thank you, Mr. O'Quizzen. Is there anyone now wishing to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance amendment?
I'm Nick Wilson. I live in Ward 4. I'd like to thank Mr. Johnson for coming to the board tonight and offering to put in a sidewalk at his facility. I do want to remind the board and the members of the citizenry of the city that is not what is on the table tonight. What is on the table tonight is to exclude this area from development of sidewalks in general. That does not preclude Mr. Johnson from eventually building this, but what we are saying is we do not think sidewalks need to be in this part of our town. A comprehensive variance process is the route we should take. The idea of having a hearing every time an individual developer wants to be excluded, or we have an area where there are developers that want to be excluded, is ridiculous. It wastes time, and it allows us to end up being capricious. A comprehensive variance process which addresses all the needs of Mr. Scarborough, the needs of Mr. Johnson, the needs of the citizens of the community, is fair for our city and will ultimately lead to a better process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor? All right, seeing no one, we'll go back to opposition, but before we do that, I want to update you on the totals. All right, those wishing to speak in favor have a total of 7 minutes left, and those wishing to speak in opposition have a total of, oh, they've used 7. All right. Oh, excuse me. All right. Those wishing to speak in favor have a total of 8 minutes remaining, and those wishing to speak against have a total of 6 minutes remaining. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Yes, as I stated before, my name is Kenny Langley, Ward 1, and I appreciate just a quick couple minutes. So, do I understand it correctly that the Transportation Committee has not had a chance yet to bring forth their research? Is that correct? So we're having discussions and then voting on it before they've brought that information forward?
But Mr. Langley, this is a time for comment.
Okay, all right. Well, I just wasn't completely clear on that, but I thought that was worth a question worth asking. So if they haven't brought it forward yet, I don't quite understand why it's a matter of discussion and voting tonight, but I'll move on since it's just comment. To me, this is a matter of looking forward and trying to think about what the potential uses for different zones and areas are in the city, and not deciding a piecemeal type of situation where one person feels like because they aren't connecting sidewalks today or the next decade. This is one of the frustrating things with planning and looking at overall city development, is it takes a really long period of time for things to move along. And that I understand, although it may not happen, hopefully it will in my lifetime, may not happen in certain other people's, and that's just the way it works. So I urge the board to look further ahead, even further than your tenure as alderman, and further as possibly even your lifespan, and look at what could happen. In terms of economic development, I don't think that we should ever use that as something to kind of scare people into a vote. I think economic development, job creation is going to come to Starkville when we've created the type of community that a lot of people want to live in, that people want to work in, and want to play in all together. And that part of that is sidewalks. I think it's ridiculous for anyone to step up and say that they're against a senior center development or expansion. We all want that. I think the issue here is, are certain developers or any developer willing to put forward 0.01% of the total cost of their development to up the ante and say that they want more? I would say that if I own property in town, and that's certainly something I would like to do in the future, I would be delighted to put sidewalks, swing set, anything I can on the property to try to push forward the quality of life for my community. Regardless of where it is, I would gladly be the first and stick a flag, so to speak, out in the front. So to me, this is an issue of accessibility and looking to the future, and I hope you guys will consider that. So I'm against amendments, at least as it is now.
Thank you, Mr. Langley.
Thank you.
Anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed amendment? Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor? Seeing no one, we'll move back to opposition. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the proposed amendment?
Evening, Mayor and Board. I'm Chris Gottbrath from Ward 2. I will just reiterate one item from my comments last week. I wasn't going to say anything, but just remind everyone that the streets that are under consideration here do connect the Lynn Lane area, where there's considerable residential development, with the commercial district along Highway 12, and I think it'd be short-sighted to exempt that from sidewalks because not everyone can drive, and that would be a reasonable shortest route that someone might want to walk along our existing roads, as highlighted in the maps in front of you. That's an important connector between those two regions. So I think people's safety is important, and having sidewalk there will aid in safety. And I don't think having the lack of sidewalk will keep people from walking there, because people are going to walk where they need to walk. It just puts them at risk. So I think it's specious to suggest that not having sidewalks is going to keep people from walking in this area, because it's a connector. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Galbraith. Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance amendment? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor? All right, seeing no one, we'll move back to opposition. How much time do we have? We have a total of 1 minute remaining for those wishing to speak in opposition.
My name is Alvin, and as I said, I have police officers that will be hurt if something happened to me. And I have a deacon, Frank Young, that it would really hurt him if something happened to me.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. And that will conclude the time for opposition speakers. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Seeing no one, that will conclude our public comment portion of the public hearing. We'll move back into a board discussion, and I'll remind the board this matter is on the agenda as an action item, so we will have further time for discussion.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your health care needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in health care.
It's not about what I have. It's about me helping somebody to get there. Hindering these, that's not quality of life. Not quality of life to me. And everybody just keep hollering about this, about Rudy Johnson. This ain't about Rudy Johnson. This is about what's right. When you do something wrong, I feel like we made a wrong decision when we made this ordinance. When you do something wrong, you go back and correct it. And I don't see nothing wrong with us going back, amending this, and try to correct this because we did something wrong. All the orders we got, I don't agree with all of them. Because as I look back over some of the orders we made, we need to go back and amend some more of the orders that we made. And these committees doesn't run this board. I don't know why they keep thinking the committee run the board. We have the final say so. You bring what to us, and we make the final decision, but you keep acting like committees run the board. They don't run the board. They do not run this board. We have the final say so. Y'all elected us to make these wise decisions for you. If you didn't want us elected, like the gentleman said, in 4 years, get us out. But the quality of life for them, how long some of these people is going to live? How long you think some of them going to live? You could probably have some parents who need to go to that same center to have some recreation for their life. I don't understand. I don't understand. Ain't but one way to do right, people. That do right. This is about every citizen of Starkville, every taxpayer, low income, no income, fixed income. When are you people going to realize this is about what's right? It ain't about you. It ain't about me. It ain't about you all. It's about doing what's right, making the right decision. Go out there and look at all the other streets that need sidewalk, that people walk down, and they walk on nothing but dirtier than the street. That's what we need to be trying to fix. But we don't want to fix that. We want to hinder something that's going to make some progress. I don't understand this board. I don't understand some of the citizens, what they want. I don't understand it. But this is not about that. This is about doing the right thing. And I hope this board do the right thing tonight. And the right thing is to amend this sidewalk ordinance. It needs to be amended. I'm through, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion by the members of the board. Any further discussion from the members of the board? Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, that will conclude our second public hearing on the proposed sidewalk ordinance amendment. And that will take us to board business. And the first matter on the agenda for the board tonight is the consideration of amending the 2009-07 sidewalk ordinance to exempt areas adjacent to and contiguous on both sides, to the industrial park road from Pollard Road to Miley Road from Industrial Park Road to Airport Road from Miley Road to Pollard Road, and Pollard Road from Airport Road to Industrial Road. Discussion by the members of the board. Discussion.
Mayor, I'd like to say a few comments if I could. You know, at the end of the day, that you've got to realize there's 20 some odd committees. You know, and the Transportation Committee does a good job. They are just an advisory committee. Just as is the Planning and Zoning. All the time we overturn their recommendations. As with any committee, at the end of the day, we're the ones that are elected to do what we think is best for the city. And oftentimes, it's often people have said, you know, downward comments that we're trying to please Rudy Johnson. And it's not anything to do with Rudy Johnson personally. But yeah, it's part of my job to take advice from the committees, and then also get. I mean, I guess my point is this: should I try to please some private and public sector people that create jobs in Starkville? Well, you bet. I mean, yeah, they're the ones. Small business is what's driving this town, and most every town in the country is. Should I keep these people happy, and should I try to find some middle ground, you bet. I think we're doing that with this. I thought that that Alderman Vaughn had some good comments. You know, you ought to do what's best for the city. I can't think of another region in the city of Starkville that I think should have a blanket exemption other than industrial park. I think that we need sidewalks in residential areas, but you know, with the industrial park, I just don't see that there's a need for it. Mr. Johnson just brought this to light, I guess. And also with that, there's going to be several other things that the previous boards have made ordinances that I found wording has been very wrong on some of these ordinances. So expect this to come up. Expect us to have to go back and correct previous boards' action. You know, not just the last couple, but if there's something wrong with an ordinance that needs to be fixed and corrected, I think that's our job and our responsibility. So this is what this is. And also, I guess I just make my plea to the mayor is, you know, Alderman Perkins has said this before, but when you choose not to get into an issue, you say it's board business. And with this, I found it rather odd that you came out from the beginning before this and made contact to the effect that, you know, you voiced your opinion, whether it was, you know, by accident or design, to tell us that you were going to veto this before we even got into this process. And I just ask you not to do that if you can, and the rest of the other board members, you know, try to do what's best for the community as a whole. And yes, you should try to please both sides. You should try to find common ground. And this is not the only ordinance. Don't expect this to be the last time that the board will come and have 2 public hearings and amend something. We'll have previous boards have amended things. We'll amend more things, and just do what's right for the city. And then also, just to the effect that, you know, I think the Transportation Committee did what we asked of them, and they will finalize that process. But this is almost blatantly obvious that the industrial park needs to be exempted. And then the other variances in different parts of the city with the 50% and the costs incurred, excessive costs, and they can finish that. But this is just something that, you know, I think is definitely needs to be passed through tonight and not vetoed by the mayor. So thank you.
Further discussion by the members of the board. Alderman Sistro.
The fact that we have so many advisory committees speaks greatly to the point that there is much to be learned before we make a decision about something. Otherwise, we frequently make emotional decisions. The advisory boards are there to advise, not to set policy, but to advise. But they bring information to us that we might otherwise not have available to us. Having said that, I'm disappointed that we're here tonight going through not a variance process, but an amendment process when we've already clearly instructed the Transportation Committee to hold public hearings, which they have done, and to develop a proposal for a variance process, which is very much needed. To me, what we're doing tonight sends the dangerous, very dangerous message that we're going to govern on the fly rather than set and hold to policy. Now, there's been lots of debate and discussion and that's gotten us to where we are tonight with the vote that we're going to wind up probably taking in a few minutes. We've gotten to the point where we can't see the forest for the trees anymore. People have staked out positions. We're talking at each other, but we're not talking to each other at this point in time. What I'd like for us as a board to do tonight is to walk back from those kinds of details and clutter that is complicating unnecessarily this decision, and take a big picture look at what we have before us tonight and what our vote tonight is going to mean to Starkville, the city as a whole, Starkville, and not to an individual project. We have a proposal before us tonight to amend our existing sidewalk ordinance to exempt a discrete area of Starkville based on it being called the industrial park. And as we've already heard tonight, I think we may be on somewhat legally shaky grounds for exempting a portion of an area. But slippery slope argument being fallacious or not, we are going to see more of these kind of requests if we go down that path. The industrial park, what we call the industrial park today, as was pointed out tonight, and that's in my ward, I'm very familiar with the industrial park, is called the industrial park, but that name is based in history. And much like the old Borden plant or the Cotton District, who have names that are based in history, that historical name, the industrial park, doesn't really reflect what that area is now or what it will be in 10 or 20 years. It's difficult for us to look forward that far when we're making these decisions. I'm going to say that another motivation, what appears to be another motivation for this amendment tonight, is the Golden Triangle Planning and Development District's reluctance to comply with the existing ordinance when they build their new office building. And it is an office building that they're building. A portion of that building is designated space for a senior center, but it is not solely a senior center. GTPDD has never made a formal request to the board for a variance. They have not asked for a variance. Instead, this issue has become very politicized, and I'm disheartened that we have placed seniors and their desire for a senior center in the middle of this, and that we are using them politically. Additionally, there's been much chatter in the community that burdensome ordinances, like our sidewalk ordinance, our stormwater ordinance, hurt our economic development, that they keep businesses from coming to Starkville, that they keep local businesses from expanding or going forward with projects. I'm going to argue that businesses value predictability, and that the inconsistent application of rules, changing ordinances to suit an individual project, actually hurt us in the long term, in our long-term economic development. There are people that are going to disagree with that just off the cuff, but for those who do disagree, that businesses value predictability and consistency, consider how volatile market prices are in periods when there's some uncertainty in the government or in other areas. And consider how much development goes on in communities that are considered to be strongly regulated. Even right here in Mississippi, some of our most regulated communities are the ones that are growing the fastest. So all of that said, let's try to put those kind of things behind us and look at the big picture about what we're voting on tonight, if there is a motion and we get to a vote. We're at a point that comes along periodically in the life of a community. Every now and then you have an option to do something that really shapes your future. And to me, we're at that point right now. And this decision is one of those decisions that tells us what we value about a community. This vote is not about whether the senior center should be exempted. It's not about whether a senior center should be located in an industrial park. It's not about whether GTPDD deserves a variance from the sidewalk ordinance. It's a vote about our future, about the kind of community that we're going to be and how we're going to govern in the future. Whether we're going to set policy based on what we value as a community and govern accordingly, or whether we're going to govern on the fly and address our city's development piecemeal and based on the politics of old. I feel certain, based on things that have been said here tonight amongst the board, that some of you, if not all of you, have already decided how you plan to vote on this. I'm also in that camp, but I ask that you do keep in mind that you're not voting on a variance for GTPDD tonight. We're not voting on a senior center project tonight. We are setting policy, and we're voting about Starkville's future.
The city attorney would like to weigh in on the legal issue.
Alderman Sistrunk, I just wanted to address your issue about the potential amendment being on quote-unquote shaky legal ground. And I think that dovetails into words like discrimination that I've heard tonight and capricious. And then in the previous hearing, we had comments that this could threaten us with liability or open us up to lawsuits. first thing first, this board is the legislative body for the municipality. It writes the law, and it can amend the law when it deems it to be proper. Secondly, there's no express legal prohibition for this particular amendment. So there's no law out there that says the board cannot do this in black and white. Third, can I guarantee that a lawsuit won't result? Well, you can't guarantee that, but what I can tell you is the standards that would be in play under either federal claims or state law claims. If it's a federal claim based on discrimination, the legal doctrine of rational basis scrutiny would apply. And what that means is that this board's action would be presumptively valid. The burden would be on the challenger to prove that it was invalid. And what that challenger would have to prove is that there was no rational basis for this decision. And traditionally under the law, that's a very high hurdle for a challenger to climb. If it was a state law claim, the board is always generally protected if it has an objective, reasonable criteria for its actions. In other words, if the action is not arbitrary and capricious, meaning not done on a whim and not done by the mere will alone. At the end of the day, the case law almost always upholds that if the board made a fairly debatable decision, it'll be all right in litigation. So can I guarantee that litigation won't ensue? Can't guarantee that, but I think the board, should it act on the amendment tonight and approve it, and should that amendment withstand a veto, the board, the city, would have the stronger argument on either a federal claim or state law claim if challenged.
Further discussion? Any further discussion?
I've got a few comments. I want to echo what Ms. Sistrunk said a lot more gracefully than I can, obviously, but I think there's, I think we've all argued this, and I know I have argued this ad nauseum. And I think when you look at the fact that just tonight we've got someone, and I'm no lawyer, but I can speak from the planning side of this, when you look at the fact that we've already had someone come in front of us tonight to talk about a blatant case of discrimination, and you look at it from the planning side of things, and you understand, and you go back to some of the things Ms. Sistrunk talked about, and you look at how planning has evolved over time, really, and you begin to see how the real foothold of spot-based zoning, of whatever we want to call it, really lost its standpoint from the fact that it was a blatant case of discrimination. And I think the only background or foundation that we can lay on this is the fact that we do have, from a planning standpoint, a zoning map. That zoning map is manufacturing. And so I find it hard that we could argue against anyone who can sit here and tell us, or I couldn't argue the fact of why do we discriminate against certain parts of the manufacturing part versus others who are not included in these streets mentioned in this ordinance. We've talked about that, and we've talked about that. I think that's the real problem in this whole thing. In addition to the fact that I think we are circumnavigating, we're putting subjectivity to this process. I don't remember one time in this whole process where somebody has said that this committee, transportation, whoever it may be, is making a decision. What I am disheartened by is their lack of respect that we're showing someone that we personally ask as a board to go forward and to make a variance process, which they were passionately doing. Sat at the table with them twice, was yelled at, was spit at, was whatever you want to call it, when every citizen in this community, who's largely represented here tonight, came and spoke against and for the ordinance and the changes that were there. I find it hard to argue against people who have expertise in this. Are they making the decision? No. But I think the real fallacy in all of this is the fact that we've spent 6 weeks arguing about this one situation. In that time, we were going through a public process, we were developing a variance, we were doing the things that we were asked. And I think everybody here agrees with the fact that there is a variance needed. I agree completely with the fact that there is a variance needed. But that variance, as with all policy, needs to be objective. And it cannot be discriminatory. It cannot be based on some whimsical idea that we can select streets out of a hat and just put them in there. It's just bad policy. And I am encouraged by the fact that, And I appreciate the fact that this will be vetoed if it passes tonight, because I think through that process we can develop the proper process, the proper procedures that really help this community. Because I think, as with everyone who's argued tonight, I mean, we've spent most of our time going back and amending ordinances that previous administrations passed. This is part of the process, obviously. It's exactly what we're doing with the variance process. But I think we have to be objective. We have to look at it from a policy standpoint. We have to look at it from outside of the confused and lack of transparent lenses that we've all gotten in this, because there's so many emotions tied to this. There's a community at stake here, not just a small business, not just a number of things. There's a community here, and we have to put in place the frameworks that help us get there.
Further discussion? Alderman Carver.
I just want to comment on a couple points brought to light. But first of all, as the city attorney said, you're saying there's no dangerous or shaky legal ground, right?
I'm saying that if the issue were litigated, I think Starkville would have the stronger argument.
Okay, I don't want that picture painted then. And yes, we'll have requests. I mean, that is our job. Yeah, there will always be requests to ordinances, and I think now that I've started with looking back into some of the ordinances, there's definitely some that I'm going to bring in front of the board. So, I mean, expect this. We're going to have requests. I mean, that's our job. So this is not a one-time thing. I think that there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of ordinances that this board should go back and revisit and clean up. So, and also, you know, with the transportation committee, they are a very, very smart group of individuals, but at the same time, they've got no private sector representation. So I would like to see maybe in the future, you know, more representation from local business owners, people like that actually have to dig in their pocket and come up with a fund to put a sidewalk out in front of their business. And so with that, can I offer a motion? Mayor, I move to amend the 2009-07 sidewalk ordinance to exempt areas adjacent and contiguous on both sides to Industrial Park Road, from Pollard Road to Miley Road from Industrial Park Road to Airport Road from Miley Road to Pollard Road, and Pollard Road from Airport Road to Industrial Park Road, as it's written.
Alderman Carver has made a motion to amend the 2009-07 sidewalk ordinance to exempt areas adjacent and contiguous on both sides to Industrial Park Road from Pollard Road to Miley Road from Industrial Park Road to Airport Road from Miley Road to Pollard Road, and Pollard Road from Airport Road to Industrial Park Road, as presented in the amendment in the packet. Is that your motion, Alderman Carver?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Carver, do you wish to speak on the merits? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll now move into a roll call vote on Alderman Carver's motion. Please answer yea, nay, or abstain as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Carver?
Yeah.
Alderman Sittrop?
Nay.
Alderman Parker?
Yay.
Alderman Corey?
Nay.
Alderman Dumas?
Nay.
Alderman Perkins?
Yay.
Alderman Vaughn?
Yay.
By a vote of 4 in favor with 3 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of approving the request from the Starkville Main Street Association for closing Main Street on February 4th, 2011 for the Duty Gras Parade and the Red Beans and Rice Amateur Cook-Off and for in-kind city services. Alderman Dumas.
I'll make a motion. I've got it reduced to writing, but it's scribbled on, and there's some additions here. So I'll read what I have. Move approval of the special event in Main Street closing from D.L. Connor to the entrance of the university on February the 4th, 2011 from 4 to 6 for the Duty Gras and Red Beans and Rice Amateur Cook-Off, with the in-kind services to be contingent upon the event organizer meeting with the city staff to coordinate the details of the city staff and service requirements in accordance with the special events policy. And it's all about at this time of day and street location. Okay. D.L. Connor to the university.
Alderman Dumas has reduced the motion he just made to writing, and since it has been read aloud and the city clerk has a copy of the written motion, I will not reread it without objection. Any objection? Seeing none. Alderman Dumas, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the matter?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Dumas's motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And I have received one request, and I would also make one myself, that we move into a brief recess. So without objection, I'm going to move us into a brief recess. Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, we stand in recess.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your health care needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in health care.
Meeting will now come back to order. And that will take us to two matters from planning and zoning to be considered tonight. And I've got to explain how we're going to do this because it's fairly complicated. I guess how we get to the point of how it's set up tonight. This matter involves two different policy decisions, but they arise out of the same facts. That is a rezone, and then in the event that the rezone is approved, a conditional use within that zoning classification. All right, where it gets complicated is the appeal process or processes for a rezone and a conditional use are different. The appeal process for a rezone is a process that allows 5 days for appeal. The appeal process for conditional use is a process that allows 10 days for an appeal. A notice of appeal dated December 23rd came to my office. Now, the original hearing that is being appealed from of the Planning and Zoning Commission was held on December 14th. So that means that it was outside of the window for the zoning period, but it is inside of the window for the conditional use. In order to have the most informed discussion for the board to hear from all parties on this, since this is a matter that arises out of all the same facts, I think the best approach for holding our public meeting process, which is called for by the appeal, is to have that at the outset of this process. But each of the matters need to be considered separately. So when we move into discussion, the zoning issue needs to be taken up first, and in the event that the zoning issue passes, move into a separate discussion on the conditional use. All right. So what that means is after Mr. Griffith introduces the matter, we will move into presentations from the applicant and the appealing party. And the appeal was made by the Vine Street residents. Do we have people here who are Vine Street residents tonight? All right, the way we'll do this is each side, the applicant and the residents, will have a total of 15 minutes to make presentations. Now the applicant, it's easier for you than it is the residents to divide that time because I assume you or a representative will be making all of the presentation. The appealing parties can choose how you'd like to divide your time. If you'd like to divide your 15 minutes evenly, that's fine. If you would like to choose a spokesperson from amongst yourselves, that's fine. But I would ask that you try to make some decision about it before we start speaking, so I'll have some idea of how to keep the time. Now, in the event that either party has any time left over, I'll give you one more bite at the apple. But you'll only get one more bite at the apple. In other words, how that would work is applicant, if you don't use all of your 15 minutes on the first go-round, and you have, for example, 5 minutes left, you would be able to speak for up to 5 minutes after hearing the arguments from the appellants. Appellants, you would be offered one more opportunity after hearing the applicant to then respond as well. But we won't keep going back and forth and doing that all night. So you'll each get your initial time block, and then you'll get a chance to respond with any amount of time that's left over, and we'll conclude the process. Are there any questions about that? Because I know that's a lot to digest. Yeah.
Are we speaking on for the application of the zoning or basis of appeal?
You're speaking on your application.
Okay.
Yeah, but any argument you wish to interject on the basis of your application, you're certainly welcome to. Any more questions about the process?
So you're saying we can split our time among ourselves?
Any way you'd like. I just would ask you to tell me before the first person speaks how you're going to divide it. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And y'all can too. I just assume it's easier since there's two of y'all. Okay. Mr. Griffith?
Mayor and Board, there's two items tonight, the rezoning and the conditional use, and the city attorney has advised that I introduce both items at the same time, beginning with the rezoning. So I'll do that now. Item RZ 10-07 is a request by Mr. Mark Welch for approval of a zoning change from R3 multifamily to B1 buffer district. The subject property is located at 711 Vine Street, just south of Highway 12, behind the Sonic Drive-In in Ward 7, and will affect approximately 0.17 acres of land. The applicant applied in 2003 and then again in 2004 to rezone the property to C2, and both requests were denied by both the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Alderman. The applicant submitted a third request for C2 zoning, and during the September 14th public hearing, it was suggested that he rezone the property to B1 and apply for a conditional use request for a parking lot on the site. The applicant has stated that he is seeking to rezone the property so the storage building and dumpster located adjacent to Vine Street can be moved onto the subject property, and also add an employee parking area. A separate conditional use request is also on tonight's agenda. 17 property owners of record within 160 feet of the subject property were notified directly by mail of the request. A public hearing notice was published in the November 23rd edition of the Starkville Daily News, and a placard posted on the site concurrent with the notice. After a lengthy public hearing in which several comments were received, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-2 to recommend approval of the rezoning request. Item CU 10-07 is a request by Mr. Mark Welch to allow a parking lot in a B1 buffer district zoning district. The subject property is located at 711 Vine Street, just south of Highway 12, behind the Sonic Drive-In in Ward 7, and will affect approximately 0.17 acres of land. The applicant has stated he would like to relocate the storage building and dumpster adjacent to Vine Street onto the subject property and add an employee parking area. Conceptual site plan was reviewed by the city's Development Review Committee on November 23rd, and no major issues were found. A copy of the conceptual site plan has been included with the staff report, as well as a letter from the applicant. A full site plan review would be conducted upon approval of the conditional use request by the Mayor and Board of Alderman. 29 property owners of record within 300 feet of the subject property were notified directly by mail of the request. A public hearing notice was published in the November 23rd edition of the Starkville Daily News, and a placard posted on the site concurrent with the notice. Planning staff proposed 6 conditions to consider if the requests were approved. The Planning and Zoning Commission revised condition number 3, added 2 more conditions identified by strike-throughs and double underlines in the revised staff report, and recommended approval of the conditional use request by a 4-2 vote. And Mr. Welch is here from the Sonic, along with Greg Russell, as local engineer and surveyor, and Mr. Bush and several other residents from Vine Street are here as well.
Do we have any questions or comments for Mr. Griffith before we get underway with the presentations?
Oh,
Alderman Carver?
I've got a question about the second one. On the condition, on the recommendations from the P&Z. It says, it's 7 and 8, there shall be only own access to the property from Vine Street, which shall be the new access shown with the proposed additional parking lot and new access to Vine Street. And, well, not sidewalk, I guess it's number 7, can you explain that to me?
On number 7, if you refer to the site plan, if you refer to that, there are, hang on a second. The second one. Flip one more page.
No, okay.
There you go. If you look at that, there are 2 existing curb cuts that are on the Sonic property directly, and then a third one is proposed on the subject property down at the south where the parking lot is.
Kind of where the dumpster sits?
Where the dumpster would sit and where the employee parking lot would be. What condition number 7 does is, let me make sure I can say this the right way. There should be only access from the Vine Street from the new access, shown as new access to Vine Street, which is the one at the south. So you would have the one at the south and the one at the north. So the one in the middle where the dumpster is located now, am I saying that right, Greg? The one in the middle where the dumpster is located would go away. So there would be one at the very south end and one at the very north end.
One closest to 12?
Closest to 12.
Would stay there.
Will stay, will remain.
The direction of the employee ingress and egress would be separate from the Sonic drive-through traffic, right? I mean, that's what that's saying, is the employees would have their own lot? Or
No, it would service anybody, any customer or employee. It's not separated because the drive-by would be, or the parking area would be utilized as part of the circulation, traffic circulation of the.
it's just an additional curb cut on the southwest corner. Yeah. Okay.
And then you had a question on number 8 was
No,
about
I
the
didn't.
was about the sidewalk.
It's just 7. Well, the sidewalk would
sorry.
be on Highway 12, right?
No, only on the new section down at the
Vine
south
Street.
because that's the only portion of the site that's being impacted. So wanted to clarify that about where it would be located.
But now number 7 specifies only one access point. So if that southernmost access point is there, then the 2 shown would have to be removed. The 2 existing, correct? As number 7 states currently.
Let me read that again.
I think on should be 1.
Yes, it
So
should
there
be
shall be
1.
only 1 access to the property from Vine Street.
What we decided to do was close the egress up next to 12.
Okay, that's
Okay.
right.
So that is correct. The southern.
That will be going away.
So it does, so it's just opposite of what?
Yes, it's
And it would move back to the southernmost point.
So if I were going to the Sonic, I'd turn down Vine and go to the end of the space.
Close that one off.
So just to recap, the northern one goes away, the middle one goes away, the new southern one would be the access point on the
And
Vine.
what the utility department said, they would move the cable over so we could suck that up closer to where the old dumpster was.
So you're reducing entrances by 2.
On Vine Street.
On Vine.
And
So
the
you're
2
going from
on
3
Highway
entrances
12.
to 1 entrance.
Yes. Yes, and the 2 on 12 remain the same, and if you notice, there's one-way arrows for circulation around the site.
Correct.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments?
So that sidewalk would extend all the way to 12 then on Vine Street.
The B1, proposed B1 buffer?
Let's try to limit the dialogue to between Mr. Griffith unless Mr. Griffith calls upon you for help.
So the new sidewalk would be on the 60-foot. The lot to the south is 60-foot wide on Vine Street, where the employee parking lot and the new driveway curb cut would be. That's the location of the sidewalk. There was some discussion during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and they wanted to clarify that so that everyone would be on the same page about where exactly the sidewalk would be constructed. So they wanted to spell that out specifically.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
I may have some questions for our department head at a later time, so I'm gonna yield right now, I may, depending on what is said.
Okay. Further questions or comments?
I got one question, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Vaughn.
That's all right, I'll hold it till later.
Further questions or comments from members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we'll now move into the public presentations. And are you ready to present?
Yes, sir.
I'm Greg Russell with Goodman Engineering, 4 Court Square here in Starkville. Pardon my appearance, I came straight from the survey field today. Ran a little long. Anyway, what Sonic Properties is wanting to do is to rezone a portion of the property that they own that's currently zoned R3 so that they can utilize this to better facilitate their property, their restaurant that they have there. This will give them an additional parking lot and create a better and safer traffic flow around the restaurant. If you look at that area over there, you can tell that there's some real issues over there with the dumpster being located basically within the right-of-way of Vine Street, which is against ordinances also. So there's a public need for this rezoning in order to modify the site in a manner to get that dumpster off of Vine Street. And I know from the comments at the last meeting that there's some issues with that being there. It was brought up during the Planning Commission meeting that one of the gates had been left open by the sanitation department, or however it got open that particular morning, and created a traffic issue. So not only is there a trash issue, but there's a safety issue on Vine Street, which I'm sure everybody would like to address. This will give employees a safer place to park away from the restaurant. The staff in their report to the Planning Commission found several changes in the neighborhood. And in looking at the zoning map of the city of Starkville, there's already property on Vine Street deeper than what we're talking about, further south than what we're talking about, that's zoned commercial. So that it would make sense that this property that's owned by Sonic Properties be zoned commercial along with this, in an attempt to work with the neighbors and assure that there's some protection for the neighbors of the area. The Sonic Properties has come back and asked for a buffer zoning on this property, which limits what they can do with this property. And that's why we have filed the site plan along with this application to show the intentions of Sonic Property on this piece of property. The neighbors are protected in a manner of they get the trash dumpster off of the street. The employees aren't parking on the street, they're parking on the Sonic property. There's a 6-foot-high solid wood site-proof fence that's going up along the south and the east boundary of the B1 property, along with the installation of some landscaping such as, it just slipped me. I'll come back to that in a minute. I'm not at all a landscaper. I'm an engineer, so forgive me. But the landscaping that would further protect and buffer the residential area from Highway 12. We've agreed to take out two of the entrances on Vine Street in order to try to limit some of the traffic on Vine Street. I think that access from the site onto Vine Street is important because everybody knows that traffic, and I'm sure that everybody here is eating at Sonic. It's tough getting out on Highway 12 after you've eaten at Sonic. This gives you another safe route if you wanted to go back west to turn south on Vine Street and exit out that way. be happy to answer any questions. That's all we have. That's the crux of our application.
And we'll have a time for questions if the board has any after the presentations have concluded. How much time? You'll have a maximum of 10 minutes remaining if you'd like to make any comments after the appellants have made the presentation.
Mr. Mayor, let me ask you one question. Am I correct, Mr. Engineer, that given your engineering drawing, sketch, and design, that you intending to close off the access from Highway 12 to Sonic and just use the one from Vine Street?
No, sir.
The one on Vine Street?
The two current entrances on Highway 12 will not be changed.
Okay.
The one existing entrance on Vine Street would be closed. And then what used to be the entrance where the dumpster is now located would be closed rather than reopened as another entrance.
Okay.
And then on the entrance from the parking lot on the new proposed B1 property would be constructed onto Vine. That would be the only entrance onto Vine, and it would be an in and out. It would be a bi-directional.
And this parking lot will be not only used by employees, but also be available to customers.
That's correct.
And am I also correct, we're talking about 0.55 acres, which is a little bit better than half an acre here?
I don't have it in front of me, but yeah, that sounds right, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are the Vine Street residents ready for your presentation?
Again, my name is Curtis Bush Jr., and I'm 721 Vine Street. I have a copy of the letter that I just asked a while ago that I brought up here because I sent it to the mayor's office on Industrial Road, and I understand that building was hit the other night, was it?
On Industrial?
Yeah, the mayor's office on Industrial Road. That's what I got it at the phone book. But anyway, that's why I mailed a letter to. I brought one up here to the secretary, and that's why she came in and asked you. But I do have copies of this letter if you would like to have a copy.
Okay. If you'd like for the board to have a copy, the
Yes,
city
I will.
clerk can pick them up from you.
First of all, I would like to say that the entire Vine Street is against the rezoning. We really do not want that to be rezoned for commercial. We're a small little community there. We cannot hardly get in and out until a couple of years back you opened up Yellow Jack Drive and enabled us to get in and out of our own street. When they were finally open and we were able to get out, we could go around right or left to the light Montgomery or back to Jackson and get out. And this has been working for us since we put it there. We don't need it. We don't need a commercial zone there. In the first place, the business is facing 12. The exit should be continuous like it is on 12, not on Vine Street. Mr. Well made this comment several years ago when we met also after the storm tore down that fence. He haven't cleaned up, he hadn't put a fence back up, he hadn't done anything he said he was going to do. He promised to meet with Vine Street resident. He has not done that either. He downright refuses to even discuss anything at all with us. We have tried to pull his plan up on the website. I went up to the stairs, and I think Mr. Griffin was already out of town. She said that he would not be back until after Christmas. I still haven't pulled it up on the website. I don't know what's the problem, but we can't get it up on the website. The plan that you have, we haven't even seen it. Not a resident of Vine Street has seen that plan that he has presented to this board. I think it's just totally unfair. I mean, understand business, and business is business. Like you say, it is really business. But to put a business into a resident where it never was. It was a house there. Nice house. He tore it down. He said it was dilapidated, but I don't think it was dilapidated because my cousin was living in the house and they moved out because the man he sold it. After Reverend Robinson died, his son sold it. House was livable. Just to that respect, you know, it was big enough. That house was up to the fence, and he never did anything. We just cleaned it off. We don't want no buffer zone. We don't want that at all, either. But what the buffer zone is going to do? It's not going to cut down the noise. It's not going to stop anything. And if you allow them to come back out on Vine Street, it's just not going to work for us as residents in that area. It's just not going to work. I think, on behalf of the members, most of us are senior citizens over there. Most of us, even including me now, thank God for the blessing. But the point I'm making is, they can't get out today, out of their house because of their condition. And with traffic floating down there like it is, I doubt if they ever be able to get out. We don't have a sidewalk. We don't have nothing to break the speed. We are just in there. We're in there. Our senior citizens over there cannot attend a meeting. They allow us to speak. And I don't mind representing them. And I think they've done well over there. And they will continue to do well. But it's just like your neighborhood. If you go to putting business in it, what's it going to end up being? You're going to be coming this, doing what you really want. You don't want the smell, and you don't want all the litter. And I know that litter is out there. It comes all the way down the street. Now, I don't know how you would do it if you recommend a sidewalk, because the end street down there by me, after Annabelle, the condos that were there, he put his all the way to the back of Vine Street, so I don't know, I guess the sidewalk had to stop on that side at the back. Or you have to buy some more property or do whatever you have to do to get the sidewalk down through there. But we definitely want something to break the speed. The speed down through there is just too fast when people come down through there. You don't know it until you really live in it. If you never lived in it, you don't really know what it's like. And the constant every day, you know, my children are now, the oldest one is in their 40s, and they never had a sidewalk over there even to walk on, and we had to watch them if they even tried to get out there in the street to ride the bicycles. It's right up on the hill, on the lot. And for a business to come down there, you got, you know, it's just chaos for us. Catherine Deeds is there too, and they go out to 12 every day. They got the one entrance and one exit, the same as Catherine Deeds has. And they can do it. Sanders can do the same thing. Now the entrance on Vine Street is going to be a hazard to not only us, but anybody else coming down there, because they're going to be speeding. They really going to be speeding. And it's very, we just don't want it. We don't want to see a rezoning. We don't want to see no buffer going up by there. Because all that going to do in the long run, I may be bleached too in the heart of this earth. But let me tell you, if you moved in there and bought the resident and then changed the business, then you want to see the difference what I'm saying. My property is rezoned, and I don't know when it got rezoned to nothing. When I moved in there and built that house, it was R1 resident, single dwelling. That's where everything down that street was. Now all of a sudden, on the map that was passed out at the planning commission meeting, it's B1 and what, you know, it's not commercial, it's not R1 anymore like it was. All of that was changed, and I don't know why I didn't get a letter or something as close as I am to either one of the properties. The only notice I got was when the apartment went up. They was going up and said it would not be entered from Yellow Jacket Drive or Vine Street, but its entrance to that apartment is from Yellow Jacket to Montgomery. I was here that night. They said that would be the entrance to that, but it got an entrance from Yellow Jacket Drive and Montgomery Street. Members of this board, I wish you would not allow this to happen to us in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. And you'll have 6 minutes remaining if you want to make any concluding comments after the applicant has made their concluding comments. Applicant, do you have any concluding comments?
We'd like to split that time if that's okay.
No, this is the last go round.
Okay.
Oh, you mean you want to split it between the two of them?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought you meant you wanted to split it, do some now and do some after they had spoken.
No, right now.
Yeah, you can certainly
Between
split it
the two
amongst
of us.
yourselves, yeah.
The complaints of the citizens are sound and trash and traffic. And in this zoning addresses, the zoning in this site plan address those 3 items that they have issues with. It limits the traffic on Divine, and based on his testimony that he just gave, he's saying that the entrance on Divine is needed out of Sonic because you can't exit onto Highway 12. So it's not just a convenience factor for the entrance to be there, it's a safety factor. Because he just stated that they can't get out on Highway 12, and so the street was opened up to the south to allow them to get out. The second is the sound. By putting up the landscaping and the site-proof fence, you're limiting the sound that goes back there. And the trash, you're moving the dumpster, which is right there on Vine Street. You're moving it back on the east side of the Sonic property, tucking it back in there, which will help out with that trash situation. So there are 3 issues that they have. This site plan and this zoning address those items. The last thing I'd like to point out is shown on the zoning map there in your packet is if Sonic property is on the property across the street, they could do what they want to do now because it's already, across the street's already a zone C2 across Vine. And so he's come back and worked with the neighbors by reducing his C2 request to a B1 and giving this site plan as an effort to work with the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman, thank you for your time.
You'll have a maximum of 6 minutes.
You got it. Well, basically what I wanted to say is back in September the 23rd, I withdrew my motion because of the concerns from the citizens over what I might do if I'd zoned it C2. And they're probably right. If I had a C2 zoning, I'd probably tear down that building and build a brand new prototype like I did in front of the Walmart on the other end of town. But for the course of the years, I knew I was not going to be able to get that through. And so out of respect to the citizens in that area, we came back in, had no knowledge of B1 as of September 23rd. And the recommendation was made to me. I withdrew my motion, went back in, basically told P&Z, look, don't tell me 7 ways it won't work. Tell me 1 way it will. All I want to do is get rid of an eyesore, a dumpster on the street, clean that area up, put some landscaping, some cypress, some fence, and let's go on down the road. So that's basically what I've done. We came back in with the B1 zoning. When I get ready to sell this, and in the future, now I've got to sell something that has C2 and B1. So we'll see how that pans out. That's going to be different because bankers look at that different when they're doing commercial properties. So, but I'm willing to do that because I'm not gonna build a new store there. So all I need it for is to clean up the dumpster, do everything I've done in my powers that I can do with a piece of property that I've owned 8 years, that have sit there, and it's an eyesore, and it's embarrassing to me, and I do live in the city of Starkville. Thank you.
Thank you.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your health care needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in health care.
Approve this decision for zoning, rezoning, or a parking lot area, buffer zone area. The citizen has given the planning commission a petition where everybody in the neighborhood has rejected this decision or whatever. We have not seen the plans as far as what Mr. Welch would like to do. And to me, some of the things I'm hearing sound contradicting. And also to me, it seemed like even if it gets rezoned, it's still gonna be an extension to his business, which is gonna, to me, expand the problems that we're already having. So it's basically, my opinion is he can clean up what he has now instead of being rezoned. You know, what he's trying to do is beautify the community, the property or whatever. This can be done without being rezoned. And to me, by denying this, it would be a great asset to the community by not, you know, approving this zoning.
Thank you. Are there any further concluding comments from the Vine Street residents?
How much time?
Good evening. My name is Robert Arm. I also live on Vine Street at 712. I've listened to all the things that have been said over, I would say, the past 2 years. And to begin with, you know, it wasn't our problem in the first place that this man bought a piece of property without the consent of the people of that area. Would he be able to do what he wanted to do? So therefore, I feel like that it was a bad business decision on his part. Now, we protested everything that he tried to do with it. I guess it's as a surprise to him, and he's just wanted to exalt his last decision and just doing what he can with it, because I think it's come as a surprise to him to see that we've come this far. And I just like to say, I'm sorry, but we had nothing to do with it in the first place. It was a bad business decision on his part. I mean, the first time that the planning commission talked to him, the lady asked him, why don't you go and talk to the people of Blind Street and see what they have to say about you in this business? I don't want to talk to them. I have nothing to say to them. If you can't decide what that should be done, I don't have anything to say. So he was telling us right there that he didn't care anything about us. All he wanted to do was make $1 for his business. I mean, I'm sorry to say it like that, but they're just calling the apple red. And we haven't said, well, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. We haven't said anything. We gave him every opportunity, to come forward and say, well, I wish that y'all would consider this. And as my sister said, I can't understand why all the drawings that you have and there's nobody else, none of us has been able to see them. I mean, he was so concerned about getting this plan over, why wouldn't he even go as far as offering the plan or bring the plan by, to the people on the street to let them see. Thank you.
Thank you. And that will conclude our presentations on the proposed rezone and conditional use. We'll now move into discussion of the items separately, and we'll first discuss the consideration of the approval of P&Z item number RZ 10-07, That's a request to change the zoning from R3 to B1. In the event that that passes, we will have discussion on the conditional use. Discussion. Alderman Vaughn.
Mr. Griffin, what reason can that you get a zone changing?
I'm sorry, Mr. Collins?
What are the reasons that a neighborhood can get a zone changing?
This is the same question that came up in September and then again in December. I have 3 zoning maps upstairs. We have the current zoning map, we have one from 1978, and we have one, I believe it's from 1983. The zonings have, the zoning boundaries have changed a little bit, but Mr. Bush and Ms. Arnold's questions about why their zonings were changed, I do not have an answer. Their properties have been pretty much zoned commercial, C2 for, I believe, going back to that 1978 zoning map. If the zoning was changed, it was changed without their knowledge at that time.
I'm talking about for commercial property to be rezoned. What grounds? Does it have to have a public need for rezoning or something like that?
Yes, sir. That's one of the.
Alderman Vaughn, can I answer that for you? We heard the rezoning communication in the same context as the conditional use communication, but they're separate and distinct legal tests. And so really the parking lot and the buffer zone and all that is not a part of the zoning change legal criteria. There are 3 tests, and the first test is whether the applicant is alleging that there was an error in the original zoning. The applicant is not alleging an error in the original zoning here, so that doesn't apply. The remaining 2 tests are whether there has been enough change in the neighborhood to justify the proposed rezoning, and whether there's a public need for the proposed rezoning. You'll note that the proposed rezoning goes from R3 to B1, which is an increase in commercial intensity. So the key inquiry is whether the neighborhood is becoming more and more commercially intense, more and more commercially dense in your mind. As we've talked about before, the Supreme Court does not define neighborhood. It lets you use your own understanding and common sense on that. And you can weigh the criteria of change that Mr. Griffith has listed in his staff report, but also based it on your own familiarity with the surroundings.
Thank you. I've been over there. Matter of fact, I was at the public hearing. And it has been no character change in the neighborhood. The neighborhood the same. And I see over here in your comments what you wrote in here about the change condition. There were 2 rezoned in 2007 in the vicinity of the subject property. One has been on the east side of South Montgomery Street at the intersection of Yellow Jacket Drive where the former Gala Apartments and adjacent property were rezoned from R3 to multiple family to R5 multiple family. That ain't got nothing to do with Vine Street. It said it's allowed to redevelop of those property the Bellow Grove and River Bend. The second was the property of the northeastern corner of Yellow Jacket Drive and Edward Drive, which rezoned from R3 to a C2 to accommodate the extensive restaurant renovation to allow for the commercial signal to be erected on the site. That ain't got nothing to do with Vine Street, and none of that on Vine Street. So really, you hadn't had a public change over there, and then the character of the neighborhood hadn't changed. So how can planning and zoning do this? That's what the previous board denied it twice. There's no change been made since the previous board denied this. So how did planning and zoning do this? I can't see how they can do this when there's no change in the neighborhood. The character of the neighborhood hasn't changed. Everything's still the same. Just the only thing been clean, just that lot. I've been there. Only thing clean off that lot. Nothing else have changed. And utilizing the business. What about the citizen live right there? With all that loud noise gonna be right there. The parking lot gonna be used. At first they said for employees. Now it's for anybody. That boy, will you want that in your neighborhood? That close to your home, to your resident, to your family. Would you want that? This is not gonna do no worse in this situation with all the traffic going in and out of. This is not gonna do no worse in that situation. They already got a traffic situation there. So I can't see that. And There's too much traffic already on the street. So if we do that, you're gonna double that traffic on that street. But for us at the neighborhood change, it doesn't change. And I can't see how planning and zoning approve this. I can't see it. I just don't see it. And it look like it's more about the business instead of the neighborhood. And then so we're about the citizens. We're about the city of Starkville. And I've seen we have made many changes and according to what our citizens and our constituents want. And our board, I just ask you to please take this on a deep-hearted consideration because it's no change been in that neighborhood, none whatsoever. And if we can go back to the property on South Washington, where the planning and zoning denied it, but the board approved it. And we can go back to the Table property, the Table project. We went along with what the neighborhood wanted. I hope that you would take this under consideration because this is a neighborhood, and this neighborhood hadn't changed. It's been that same way. And like I said, the previous board denied this twice.
Further discussion. Alderman Carter.
My question, it says on here, the understaffed recommendation should be based on approval of request of zoning will be based on changing conditions in the area and public need.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Public need has to be part of that test.
What are some examples of public need?
The courts have said that safety is public need. Also, public need, increased tax base, increased business can be a benefit to public need. Those are two examples that the cases talk about a lot. Other examples would be if somebody's trying to build a multi-unit housing complex for students and stats show that students need housing. That could fit a public need as well.
Further discussion. Alderman Parker.
I think I would look at it differently if we were trying to do C2 and we were trying to demolish everything and redo, but to me this actually reduces traffic on Vine because you have no incentive to turn off 12 to go into the entrance that far down Vine to get into the Sonic. And you're going to come in off Vine, and the only case you'd really have for people coming into the Sonic would be from Yellow Jacket, or if they're leaving on the west side and going to Montgomery, you would go out that entrance to get to Yellow Jacket. So I feel like this plan actually is, I do feel like it would alleviate, would you not think it would alleviate some of the concerns that the residents had with the fence, with the evergreens that are kind of blocking the view, blocking the noise? And I agree that there is the dumpster being on the road is definitely a safety issue.
Further discussion. Alderman Douglas.
That, just what Alderman Parker's talking about is really my justification, and City Attorney, I'd like your opinion on that. I've never voted on one on the sheer fact of public need alone.
That you can't do it on public need alone. There has to be change plus public need.
Plus public need. Because I think when you look at the public need aspect of it, and I think when you look at the safety aspect of it, when you look at the removal of those entrances, because I think the sheer fact that one entrance is so close to Vine on 12 is a traffic concern. I think with the immediately adjacent entrance that's being removed, I think that's a thing. So I think with the overall site design, I think there's a considerable public need there from the safety aspect. And I think too with the buffer zoning, I really think that helps from the commercial aspect, and this is in the Highway 12 corridor. If anything, that in and of itself helps preserve the character of the neighborhood more than the C2, which some surrounding areas have. Ben, so your 1978 comment is talking about the C2 across Vine Street to the west.
The 1978 zoning map shows a swath of C2 basically parallel to Highway 12. And then as the years have changed, that has kind of changed a little bit, but basically it's C2. I guess if you look at the current zoning map, an example I point to is along the bypass, where you have C2 zoning, and there's a measurement there that says 600 feet. So apparently in 1978 there was just a parallel to when that zoning map was adopted, and I believe that it was the second zoning map, because the first one was from 1969, and I've not been able to put my hands on one of those yet. But the oldest one that I have is from 1978.
I got one more question about the change in character of the neighborhood. How far back should we consider? I mean, 1978 or 2003 or 4? How far back should we be trying to consider in our judgment on this?
And before you answer that, may I ask a question that's going to fit in with that one? In our documentation here, it talks about changing conditions in an area. It doesn't mention neighborhood.
Yeah, the Supreme Court talks in terms of neighborhood.
Okay.
And to answer your question, Alderman Carver, that's undefined. It's how far back the timeline should be for the change. What is defined is you can't look to future change. There's a reference in Mr. Griffith's staff report about cotton mills. Can't count cotton mills yet because it hasn't happened.
Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, might be recognized.
You may.
Before I get some comments, Mr. Griffith, what strip are you talking about that's on the Highway 12 that's C2? What are you talking about?
Along the south side of Highway 12.
Where? Specifically, tell me what you're talking about.
Well, if you refer to the zoning map here, the locator map.
I just want to know what's there now. I'm familiar with that area. What are you talking about? What location are you talking about? Where on 12?
Where on 12?
Yeah, you're talking about C2 in proximity to Vine Street.
Well, immediately on 12 is zone C2.
Where? Identify the name of the property.
Well, the Sonic is zone C2. Miss Arnold's house is zone C2.
Smith Arnold?
Miss Minion Arnold back here in the back. Several of the other residential properties are zone C2 as well, and they're not fronting on Highway 12, but they're within that zoning area.
Mr. Mayor, let me say this. This matter has a lot of procedural history and has a lot of board history. The last time this matter came before the board, we had 6 wards and an alderman at large. Ward 7 is now the site of this current property. Ward 7 came about as a result of the redistricting, and Ward 7 came into full force in effect and into law when the new board took place in 2005. When the property came up in 2003, 2004, this subject property was located in Ward 3. The scholarly gentleman, and I must say that to give credit where credit is due, Mr. P.C. McLaurin Jr. took care of these residents. Alderman P.C. McLaurin Jr. walked the floor for these residents, and we need to do the same thing for the residents. Alderman McLaurin walked the floor for these people because he felt that was the right thing to do. When the recommendation came from the Planning and Zoning Commission on each occasion, the recommendation was denial. There's nothing different on the 4th day of January of 2011, in my opinion, as it was in 2003 and 2004. There is no change in the character of the neighborhood that warrants this rezoning. I was over at this property site as late as 10 minutes past 4 p.m. Central Standard Time on the 4th day of January 2011. There's no change in the character of the neighborhood. The neighborhood is Vine Street. The staff report cites some property down at the location of Yellow Jacket and Eckford Drive. That is not part of the neighborhood. Be realistic with yourself. Yellow Jacket and Eckford is not considered Vine Street. And no disrespect to South Montgomery, the Annabella does not consider themselves a resident of Vine Street. This location is no longer in Ward 7 because the redistricting was done to try to keep common interests together. This area was gerrymandered out of Ward 3 into Ward 7. These people have steadfastly, faithfully, and untiringly and continuously come to the board to protect their property values. As one of the earlier gentlemen said, I think Alderman Vaughn said, well, we want this in our neighborhood, and the answer to that question realistically would be no. This is an attempt by Sonic to expand its business. I mean, the same purpose is going to be accomplished. They want to expand it. Yes, it's going to be a noise. It's going to be loud music. It's going to be trash. It's going to be litter. I know if it's litter up and down Hospital Road, there's going to have litter coming from a restaurant. I'm picking up litter all the time on the street where there's no restaurant. There's no change in the character of the neighborhood. There's nothing that justifies it. The Annabella sits on the corner of Yellow Jacket and South Montgomery Street, and that is not part of the Vine Street neighborhood. We know it. You know it. I mean, we have our own definition of neighborhood, and that is not so. Let's not try to find a way to accommodate this applicant. Let's be consistent in our decision making. It's very interestingly to note that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends the support and idea of the residents on South Washington Street. Why do they do that? Because that's what the neighborhood wanted. I can cite many, many instances. There are a lot of instances over the course of my 17 and a half years on this board, down South Montgomery Street, Academy Road, when the residents from those areas pack this boardroom and the crowd extends back out to the main, to Lampkin Street, the board has done what the residents wanted. And I have consistently supported the residents. These people, citizens, taxpayers, want to protect their property values. They want to protect their family values. And they have every right to do so. The board considered the matter from Planning and Zoning that approve a recommendation for Planning and Zoning to allow the Taylor property to develop. And the board went along with the property owners. But the question here tonight before this board is there a legal reason? Is there a legal reason that justifies the rezoning of this property in question from an R3 to a B1? And it is my opinion that there is no evidence that supports a decision to rezone. The change in the character of the neighborhood is not there. I challenge anyone to substantiate that. You don't have it. The neighborhood is Vine Street. The neighborhood is not Starkville High School. The neighborhood is not the baseball field of Starkville High School. The neighborhood is not South Montgomery Street. South Montgomery is not part of that neighborhood. We'd be foolish to think that. You'd be foolish to try to even convince yourself of that. Let's do the right thing. Let's treat these people right. Let's treat these people fair. let's treat these people just. They do not want it in their neighborhood, and there's no legal reason to grant that. And I encourage the board to do the right thing, and that is to follow the law. And the law does not support a rezoning. There may be some colleagues of mine that may come and speak after me, but I'm still not convinced, after even a personal tour and observation of that area some less than 4 hours ago. Let's not rezone selectively. Let's be consistent in our decision making. Let's follow the law. And with those things said, I am of the opinion that there is no evidence that would support the rezoning of this subject property from R3 to B1. And that's what we missed the gentleman from 3. You know, one thing I have to say, Mr. Mayor, before I let this floor go. You know, I did not agree with everything that Alderman McLaurin did, but I tell you one thing for sure. One thing for sure. I'm just going to call a spade a spade. He was a very scholarly and intellectual gentleman. And he did what he believed in. He took care of these people. And how do I know? Because I was right here when it happened. You may have your own opinion about him, but when these people came here, he took the floor, he stood up, he represented. Why? Because he took care of his constituents. And he did the same thing for these constituents as he did for those that live down South Montgomery. He did what was right. He did it in 2003. Alderman McLaurin stood up in 2004, and we need to stand up in 2011 because that's the right thing to do. I'm just going to tell you just like it is. I've told you before, I'm up here only to do the right thing. I want to be about fairness. I want to be about what's right. I want to be about what's just. And I want to do the right thing for the constituents, and not only for Ward 6, but as long as I am here, I want to do what is right for everybody. And that's where I will get my blessings from, by treating everybody right and doing the right thing. And I hope that this board will defeat this request based on the fact that there's no evidence to support it. And Mr. Mayor, I yield the floor. Thank you.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman Parker.
Well, I don't feel like there's any way. My neighborhood is not Oakmont Road. My neighborhood is Oakmont and Turnberry and Wedgewood. I mean, I don't see how you can define a neighborhood as one road that's a quarter mile long. I mean, with respect to our former alderman from Ward 3, I absolutely respect him as well, and I thought he did a great job. But I'm elected now to represent Ward 3, and this property is surrounded, that there's 6 properties that surround this. 5 of the 6 are already zoned C2. The 2 across the street, the 2 to the north, 1 to the east, and the 1 to the south is R3. I don't see how it's not applicable that it would be a buffer zone, because a buffer zone is designed to buffer between commercial and residential, and that's exactly what he's trying to do here. He's trying to buffer it. So he actually takes the any noise or anything that you would have from a commercial and limit those things so they don't get into the neighborhood.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Alderman Vaughn.
Again, I was asked this question. Would you want that in your neighborhood? Have you been there and seen the distance from where this buffer zone goes to the resident home? Would you want this at your house? Would you? These people, these employees come there and work 4, 5, 6 hours. These residents, they're 24 hours a day. They are there 24 hours a day. They come and go, but these people's at home every day. Board, I ask you again to look in your heart and do the right thing. I told y'all when I first come here, I go home and go to sleep. Y'all probably wonder about your decision and wrestle with your decision all night long. Henry Vaughn do not wrestle with a decision because I ask God that every decision I make will glorify him. I go home and rest, people. You better start doing the same thing so you can get some sleep and you won't worry about your decision. I try to make the best decision that I can for the citizens of Starkville.
Further discussion.
My decision is not made yet, but I do need some kind of direction. I mean, how far back, before I make a decision, I mean, how far back should somebody recommend that we look to 78 or 03? I mean, is there any advice you may have? Or?
The city attorney has advised me that if a property's been rezoned, if there's been a rezoning request, that I am to go back to that request. I can't go back any further. So in this case, the last request was from 04. So I would go back to 04 because there's and it's a legal word and I'm not a lawyer.
It's a legal word's res judicata.
Res judicata.
And that is correct. That you, for instance, if there was a rezoning on Vine Street,
yes,
then change would be from that last rezoning to this proposed rezoning.
So you recommend we look from 04 to now if there's a character change and public need within that?
And where's the change in 04, Ben?
I'm sorry?
Are you saying there was a change in 04?
No, I'm saying that the last rezoning request that the applicant made that was denied was in 2004.
Then that's correct, Mr. Alderman Carver.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Any further discussion by the members of the board?
But I guess just to clarify what you're saying, Chris, is that then assuming that this board in whole agrees with the decision made in 2004?
What was the requested zoning in 2004?
C2.
Different scenario. You can go back farther because res judicata applies when you're bringing back the same zoning question, the same proposed zoning. In other words, if it was C2, but it's C2B1, so you can go back forward past 2004.
Has B1 ever been requested for this site?
No, sir.
So then for that fact, then we could go back all the way to 1978, which is the earliest record of...
Again, the case law doesn't define how far you can go back unless there's been a zoning request for the specific zoning that's being sought on the current application.
Further discussion.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
State your motion.
I would like to deny P&Z zone the consideration to approve P&Z item RZ 1007, a request by Mr. Mark Welch for a zoning change from R3 to multi-family to B1 buffer district located at 711 Vine Street in Ward 7.
Alderman Vaughn has made a motion to deny P&Z item number RZ 10-07, a request by Mr. Frank Welch for a zoning change from R3 multifamily to B1 buffer district located at 711 Vine Street in Ward 7. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Discussion. Any discussion? Any discussion?
I've got something. I guess my opinion on this, and I know I can't base it on a site design, but as I mentioned before, the public need aspect is there. But the real thing, when you go back to 1978 and you look at change, and you consider what change was when the initial planning and zoning map was prepared for this area, if in fact that's true, and we had an offset, just a general offset of what was there, the character of Highway 12 is a continually evolving thing. So I think when you look at the nature of the fact that this piece of property is only 163 feet from arguably the most heavily traveled commercial road, 4-lane state highway in this city, I think one could argue that the character of the neighborhood is changing. Now, I agree with Alderman Parker, and I know we've gone back and forth with this, and I think each case is unique to its own, but I think there's justification there to allow this to happen so that the intensity of the property that is in question here does preserve the character of the neighborhood. Because as it's presented, it's parking. And it does help from the public aspect of sanitation, of egress, of ingress, of other type things. Traffic congestion within a poorly designed intersection as it currently stands.
Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say one thing, may I be recognized?
You may.
The question is whether or not there's been a change in the character of the neighborhood. There has not been any evidence to support it. Let's not try to fashion some explanation to cram this rezoning down the throats of these long-term city taxpayers. The evidence is not there. It was not there then, and it's not there now. So I respectfully encourage the board to let's honor the will, the wishes, and the requests of the taxpayers from this neighborhood on Vine Street. And it is my final opinion tonight that the neighborhood does not extend past Vine Street. To make it clearer, the Vine Street neighborhood is not on the corner of Yellow Jacket and Eckford Drive. The neighborhood of Vine Street is not on the corner of South Montgomery Street. The Vinehood neighborhood is Vine Street. That's the neighborhood. That's as plain as I can say it and as clear as I can say it. I think we all get the message from that. So I hope that the board will support this motion and deny this the request by the petitioner.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll now move into a roll call vote on Alderman Vaughn's motion, which is to deny P&Z item number RZ 10-07. Please answer yea, nay, or abstain as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Sistrom.
Could you start at the other end?
Mr. Mayor,
No, you got to answer.
Okay, well, give me a second. I have to. I want to affirm the P&Z recommendation, so I'm voting nay. Is that?
That would be the correct vote.
Nay.
Alderman Parker.
Nay.
Alderman Corey.
Yay.
Alderman Dumas.
Nay.
Alderman Perkins.
Yay.
Alderman Vaughn.
Yay.
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
By a vote of 4 in favor with 3 against, this measure passes. So the P&Z item number RZ 10-07 is denied, and that negates the need to discuss the conditional use. The next matter on the agenda is the request for approval of the City of Starkville Fire Department claims docket as of December 30th, 2009. We'll give Alderman Carver a moment to exit the room. Discussion.
So moved.
Motion has been made to approve of the City of Starkville Fire Department claims docket as of December 30th, 2009. Alderman Dumas, that's your motion? It is. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the matter?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. We'll give Alderman Carver a moment to re-enter the room, and that will exhaust the open session portion of our agenda. We do have one item for potential discussion in executive session, and have you been briefed on that item? Okay. I was going to say it's one that optionally could be discussed in open session.
It's potential land acquisition with respect to the cemetery.
Right.
I don't know how timely the issue is.
But there's not a property owner, so I don't think there's a great need to go into executive session. The property's been surveyed. I'll give you a moment if somebody thinks we should go into closed session. Without objection, I'll just continue to discuss it. The property has been surveyed, and now is the time the city attorney could move forward to figure out how the city will acquire the property. There's no action necessarily needed. The board certainly could put an order on the books to that effect. Without objection, I can direct the city attorney to go forward and do that. Okay, that's what we'll do.
Do we need to make a motion?
You may.
I make a motion that the mayor give the city attorney the authority to go ahead.
Oh, okay. Motion has been made by Alderman Vaughn to give the city attorney the authority to begin to go forward in determining how the city should acquire property at the Brush Arbor Cemetery. Is that the name? That's the correct name?
That
Is that your motion, Alderman Vaughn?
That's my motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And we now have no items pending for executive session. A motion to recess will be in order. Do I hear a motion?
Mayor, I move that we recess until January 18th, 2011, 5:30 at City Hall.
Alderman Corey's made a motion to recess until January 18th, 2011 at 5:30 at City Hall. Alderman Corey, is that your motion? Do I hear a second? Second. Motion has been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.